good morning, good evening, depending on what side of the world you're on. We want to welcome you to our very first episode of From the Barber Chair. It is May 5th, 2021. I am your host, Mr. Mason, with the message. So today's topic is based on that instrumental that you heard as the show was coming on. And it's dealing with a certain statement that says, ain't it lucky we got 'em, good times. But we'll deal with that later. I just want to give you a little brief synopsis about what the show is about. What we're going to be dealing with in this show is all sorts of topics ranging from religion, relationships, spirituality, sports, science, anything you can think of, just basic topics that you would deal with when you come to a barbershop, things that barbershop conversation, things that people talk about. We want to talk about the importance of the barbershop on this first episode, just so you can have a clear understanding of what this podcast is going to be about. Like I said, once again, I'm your host, Mr. Mason with the message. And we also want to have a special harmony at the end of each episode. We're going to call it the beautiful voice behind the scene. And eventually you'll get a chance to see where this harmony is coming from. But it's going to be real interesting. We are very excited about where this journey is going to take us. And hopefully people will be awakened by this podcast, and people will begin to live in a better manner because of this podcast. And maybe people who are in the profession of barbering or hair care or something like that will bring back professionalism, good customer service, and quality work to their craft. Now, let me tell you something about the barbershop. The barbershop has always been the pillar of every community. I don't care what community you live in, the barbershop is always the pillar of the community. Barbershop owners and people who work in barbershop act as extra parents or father figures to the community. When people need a safe haven, back in the days, they would go inside the barbershop. When young kids was too young to work, at a certain time in life, you had to have a work permit. You had to be 15 and 9 months. A lot of times kids wasn't old enough yet. So the barber will let you come in the shop, sweep the floor, give you some money, maybe a free haircut or something. You know the saying, if you hang around a barber long enough, pretty soon you'll get a haircut. So the barbershop is very important. I think the understanding of that has been lost in our society. And a lot of barbershops are failing to exude those three principles: professionalism, good customer service, and quality work. They use the barbershop as fronts to support their supplemental incomes. Yet the barbershop is a very, very professional environment, and there's a lot of conversations that go down in the barbershop. Not only are there conversations that go down, because I don't want you to mistake it for gossip, but these are real life issues that people want to deal with. And a lot of times clients will come into a barbershop and they, over the years, have developed a strong relationship with their barber. They trust in their barber, and they share some things with their barber that they typically wouldn't share with anybody else. A lot of times, it might be some things that's happening within the community. I don't know why it is, but it seems like a barbershop gets the news before the actual news station and the local newspapers get the news. So From the Barber's Chair is going to be a direct example of what it is like when a client comes into the barbershop and begins to dialogue with his barber. Now, let me give you a little more in-depth history on the barber business before we get into the topic of our discussion for today. Now, the barber business itself is the second oldest business in the world. Now, it dates all the way back to around 5000 BC. The barber business was first founded in the land of Kemet, which we now know as Egypt. They would make cutting utensils out of seashells, out of the sea. They would use rocks to hone out different kind of sharp devices, to style the hair and get it to the perspective that they liked it to be. And also, the more significant thing about the barber business, it wasn't afforded to everyone. It was kind of like a ministry where you have to have a calling to actually be able to manifest one of the gifts of the fivefold ministry, So in the barber business, mostly the barbers were priests. They were in some form of leadership. Most barbers were doctors. They were surgeons. They were dentists. Barbers also were shoe repair people. Barbers did a lot of things outside of just cutting and styling hair. So, there was a time when if you need a tooth extracted, you didn't have a dentist or, surgical hygienist, I believe that's the word for it, to go in and extract the tooth from your mouth. Most people went to the barber. With that being said, we must understand how important the barber business is and how far it's come and how far it's going to go. Because it doesn't matter what time we're living in. Like right now, we're making our way through a pandemic. There's been a recession, threats of a depression. A lot of people are drawing unemployment. A lot of people are laid off work. A lot of people are in between jobs. Businesses are suffering. And even still, people want to get their hair cut. So I just wanted to expound on that a little bit so we have a better understanding of how important the barbershop is and, how important the craft of barbering is as a whole. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to read the lyrics to the instrumental that was played as the show was coming on. Now, I'm sure most of y'all are familiar with the old television show, Good Times. It was a favorite show amongst a lot of families. And I'm going to give you a little history on the television show, Good Times, in a minute. But let me just read these lyrics real quick. The lyrics go, good times. Anytime you meet a payment, good times. Anytime you need a friend, good times. Anytime you're out from under, not getting hassled, not getting hustled, keeping your head above water, making a wave when you can. Temporary layoffs, good times. Easy credit ripoffs, good times. Scratching and surviving, good times. Hanging in a child line, good times. Ain't we lucky we got it, good times. So we want to deal with that today because we need to know why we have to be lucky to have a good time. So there must be something on the other side of that. So one could surmise that if a person is going to be lucky to have a good time, that if we was to put good times on a scale and weigh it against oppression, poverty, degradation, abuse of power, nepotism, underprivileged, and the list can go on and on. One could surmise that it could be very hard to have a good time when you're growing up or living in a constant struggle. So you can marinate on that for a second. The author of that song was Dave Grusin. He wrote the song, and the gentleman who was playing the piano was Andrew Bergen. So just marinate on that for a second. I have some notes I want to run through before we get into this. Now, let me give you a little history on that television show. Now, that television show aired in 1974. Now, that was the first black television sitcom. The first black television sitcom. Let this resonate within you. It was the first black television sitcom depicting the black family in the midst of a never-ending struggle. It seemed as though no matter what direction they turned in, the struggle still found its way to them. You had some characters that were played in that show. You had JJ. He was an aspiring artist who had no support besides his family, which were struggling just to survive. Therefore, JJ found his pastime stealing art supplies to make his dream come alive. Now, just think about that, because some people out here are growing up in the struggle right now, and it's no matter how many times they ask for help, it seems as though they're not getting any help. Now, I was taught growing up that a person that has no support system is a person that is going absolutely nowhere in life. So I want you to remember this. So JJ is stealing to make his dream come true. He's stealing to make his dream come true. Then you have Thelma, who is the sister of JJ, who is a very pretty girl, and she got the young boys standing in line trying to get with her. So Thelma, when she finally thinks she hits it big, she meets a football player. They get married, only to find out that it's false hopes and lost dreams. Football player ends up getting injured, career is over. Thelma and the football player are both broke, living in the projects. Then you have Michael, which was AKA known as the militant midget. He was the activist of the family. He was pro-black. He was power to the people. He was for the people. Michael, no matter how positive he was, one day he decides to join a gang. So just think about this television show. In 1974, the first show that ever depicts a black family. And then you had the mother, Florida Evans. And Florida was a good example of a mother who holds down the fort. Florida had her husband's back. She did whatever he needed her to do. She kept the house together. And when times got really bad, Florida said, I'm strapping up my boots and I'm going to work. And I'm going to help my husband. Only to come to a day where her husband dies on the job site by falling off of a crane. So this illustration of black families, and I'm not just going to put it in a nutshell and say black families, because poverty don't discriminate amongst races. Poverty touches every ethnicity, depending on, you know, how you grew up or the circumstances that you had to survive in. So the thing I want to bring out about it, though, is it didn't seem like it seemed as though no matter how hard they tried, they just couldn't get a win. They just kept failing in everything that they did. I think that is a piss poor analogy of the black family. Yet, we have been generationally plagued and cursed by this image of the black family. Now, and I'm not saying that there was no black families or no families, period, growing up in the projects. However, what I'm saying is, it wasn't that bad where they couldn't find the silver lining in the dark cloud, if you understand what I'm saying. So ain't we lucky we got them? Good times. So we have a lot up against us, you know, when we're dealing with having a good time. And these are things that we particularly need to pay attention to. Having a good time is something that affects your health in a positive manner. Although, if you find it very hard in the state or the situation that you're in to have a good time, then it's affecting your health in a negative manner. Also, let me just illustrate some other things that were going on so you can have an understanding of the events that were happening in 1974. So in 1974, in spite of Good Times airing and the Partridge Family going off air, well, let me bring this out first. The father on Good Times was actually wrote off the show because he got into it with one of the producers. I think he thought he wasn't being paid enough. You know, they was giving JJ all the money. So he got wrote off the show. So even in the midst of that, he gets wrote off the show in the most tragic way ever. You know. So this is subliminal message I want you to pay attention to. You know, because there's an underlying agenda for everything in life. And we need to not be bamboozled by the smoke and mirrors. We need to not be confused from falsehood and truth. And we have to know when we are being hypnotized by society's sorcery. So, in 1974, you had what was called the Watergate scandal. Okay. The Watergate scandal was one of the biggest scandals in government. Actually, it led to President Richard Nixon resigning from being president. Also in 1974, the country was in a state of inflation, headed to depression because inflation was up 11.3% in the United States, and it was skyrocketing all across the world. Also in 1974, there was an oil crisis in 1974. So there was turmoil not just in the projects, but also on Capitol Hill in 1974. Also, 1974, because of the lack of income and all the impoverished living, SSI had to update their subsidized benefits. So they included extra benefits within their subsidized packages, which enabled other people to be eligible to receive help from the government. All of these things took place in 1974. On the flip side of that, I know some can remember this and some can't, but there was also a rumble in the jungle. In 1974 is when Muhammad Ali went to Zaire and fought George Foreman. So 1974 was a very interesting year. It was very interesting because there was turmoil all across the land and throughout the world in 1974. And in the midst of all that, we have a television show telling us that we are lucky to have a good time. Now, I feel as though that's an insult anytime a person has to feel lucky to have a good time. You know, you mean to tell me not on our own merits, but on the merits of our mothers and fathers, we are conceived, received, and birthed into a society that raises us up to believe that it's equality for all. It's opportunity for all. This is a democracy created for the people and by the people. Only to find out when you get older, the struggle is more realer than having a good time. Now, let me say this. And we would love to get some feedback when this podcast airs, you know, because the feedback is fuel to our fire, and we will address any comments that is made when this airs. But let me share this with you real quick. According to many scholars and psychologists, just by being happy, having a good time, it improves your health. Happiness, having a good time, combats stress. Happiness, having a good time, strengthens your immune system. Happiness, having a good time, it reduces pain. Happiness, having a good time, promotes life longevity. Now let me tell you what's on the flip side of that. According to the American Academy of Family Physicians, okay? So you just got the viewpoint of a psychologist that deals with the function of the brain and how people react to those brain functions and what happiness can do for your life and having a good time can do for your life. It increases your life. It betters your life. It helps you deal with stress and pain and all kind of anxieties, things that hinder your life, if we could just have a good time. Now, on the flip side of that, let me give it to you from a doctor's point of view. According to the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American Academy of Family Physicians, Poverty is associated with a variety of adverse health conditions. It leads to, get this, because this is the opposite of what I just said. It leads to a short life expectancy. We must evaluate this information. We must also understand this information. And we must work toward fixing these problems within our families and within our own communities. Because if we allow a problem to turn into a condition, it is at that point the problem becomes out of control. When it's out of control, it's to the point where it's almost untamable. And all we have to do to click that switch is to re-evaluate the way we think. See, society and media and television and Hollywood has shaped our minds to think a certain way, and now we have been generationally victimized by this system of oppression. There's no reason why, even if you were born in a impoverished state and you had to grow up in the projects or you was raised on subsidized living, there's still no reason why where you cannot rise above your situation. We should not be feeling lucky to have a good time. You know, I like something that's in the scripture for those that read the Bible, where it says, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope and a future. Now, mass media and society and Hollywood has continuously found ways to trick us into doing the things that is detrimental to our own health. So we shouldn't feel lucky to have a good time. So here's what I challenge the viewers to do. I challenge you to sit down with your family, evaluate your family, the condition that your family is in. You know, then as a whole, I want you to collectively evaluate the community that surrounds you and your family. When you do that, then you can start to discern the positives and the negatives about the situations that you're in. When you start to discern the positives and the negatives about the situations that you're in, then it's a process of elimination. Anything negative, you can fix that. You know, one of the things we teach on is etymology. Etymology deals with the origin of a word. When we are using words outside of its proper context, we have no power in our speech. So when I think about this, I think about the words abracadabra. Abracadabra, society will teach you. Mass media, Hollywood, television will teach you. 95% of the people you ask, what does abracadabra mean to them? They will teach you it has to do with magic. But if you spoke the Arabic language fluently, you would know that abracadabra means anything you want in life, if you work for it, you can have it. So if you want to change your situation, all you have to do is put forth the work and change the situation. Because nobody's situation is going to change on its own. That's a false hope, and that's an empty dream. Ain't we lucky we got good times? I want to change the dynamic of that, and I want to encourage people to have more good times. I believe it was an R&B group back in the day called Chick or Chick or however you pronounce it. They had a song called Good Times. You know, it didn't matter when that song came on, you got up and started dancing. You know, you was having a good time. So why can't we have a good time when we're doing our daily routine? Why we can't have a good time within our homes, with our families? Why can't we have a good time when it comes down to establishing our financial situation? Why can't we have a good time? Because society has trained us to think that having a good time is only for the lucky. You know, I beg to differ, because if you watch television, it seems like they having all kinds of good times. You know, you go to the beach, you see people having all kinds of good times. You go to the club, you go to the bar, you see people having a good time. But when we look at this in retrospect, it's like getting high. You know, a high only lasts for so long. Then you got to come back and deal with reality. See, so a lot of people will tend to sugarcoat their responsibilities in life, because it's typically responsibilities that torment us in life. You know, we just don't feel like doing it. Or we think we deserve something we didn't work for. You know, we want it given. You know, and we put ourselves in compromised positions when we think like that, because we end up compromising ourselves, you know, so we can get instant gratification. But the message for the day is, you never have to feel lucky to have a good time. All you have to do is work toward your goals, take care of your responsibilities, evaluate your circles, see what's negative that can be fixed, see what's positive that can be poured more energy into, and I can guarantee your frown will turn upside down and become a smile, and you will start having more of a good time. We got to start thinking outside of the box. We have to know that we are blessed in spite of the mess. We have to have what is called psychological resiliency, and that's being able to roll with the punches of life. And more importantly, for the ones that we say we love, we have to be able to stick together and really show that love. Because one day we might need to be each other's crutches. So, another thing I want to bring out before we close, it is very important to follow divine instruction. The things that I just read to you came from scholarly articles. They were written by certified doctors, physicians, and psychologists in their respective fields. And one thing I'm going to tell you about spirituality, anybody out there that's spiritual. Spirituality deals with 5 attributes. And a lot of times you're not going to hear this, but you're going to hear it right now. Those 5 attributes consist of biology, which deals with the cycle of life for all living things. It deals with science, which science is the unadulterated facts and the facts alone. It also deals with metaphysics. Metaphysics deals with manifestation. As a man thinketh, so is he. Speak those things into existence as though they were, and they shall be. Metaphysics is the ability to use your mind to be creative and then manifest what's in your mind. Before I give you the other two, let me just say this about that in metaphysics. Because a lot of people are not using their mind in a proper way. There was a philosopher by the name of Plato. Plato said that the reality is in the mind. And everything that we physically create from the mind is only a figment of our imagination. So what's in the mind is spiritual. What's out here in the tangible is physical. So it's just a figment. Figments will pass away. Spirit will last forever. I'm pretty sure the person that invented the chair, when he thought about how to invent the chair, that spirit passed on to other people, and now you got people thousands of years later still making chairs off of one spirit. So the reality is in the mind, and the things that we create is a figment of our imagination. So we can't be envious or coveting over what other people got, because we got the mind to manifest our own things. So metaphysics, dealing with manifestation. And then you have astrology. Astrology deals with the signs of time. Astrology deals with the weather. Astrology helps you understand the atmosphere around you. We are creatures of vibration. Monotone. You ever heard the saying, if the vibe not right, or the vibe is not right? That's short for vibration. Typically, when the vibe is not right, you need to change people, places, and things. You need to find yourself where the vibration is right. It's that simple, you know. Now, that's dealing with astrology. Then you have what is called etymology. And I expounded on this a little bit earlier in this episode. Etymology deals with the origin of a word. So it is very important that when we're dialoguing with each other, we're using words in its proper context, because words are spiritual. If we're not using words in its proper context, then we're not having any power within that conversation. If we're not having any power in that conversation, there will never be change manifest. See, for example, a lot of people like to read the Bible, and, you know, let's say the word love, for example. You know, the word love is used a lot of times in Scripture. Now, the interesting thing about this is, in the context of love that deals with agape, is based on unconditional circumstances. That's a God-like love. Then you have philia love, brotherly love. You know, you have eros love. That's when you lay down with the opposite sex and, you know, share intimate moments with each other. And there's a whole different intellect and language when it comes down to dealing with love. But for the most part, most scriptural texts, whether it's in the Bible, the Quran, or whatever book you read, the Kama Sutra, it's talking about charity. So, when we say we love somebody and there is no action to prove it, then it's just empty conversation. We're using the word outside of its proper context. And if we let Webster or Britannica or one of these people dictate to us what love is, we will also find out from them that it's dealing with some kind of emotion, some kind of intimacy with one another. But there comes a time when we have to go below the surface. In the words of Chuck D, we have to know the game behind the game. We have to peel the onion back so we can get to the truth. So if we really want to have a powerful impact on each other, we have to show love through charitable sacrifice. Another scripture tells us there is no greater love than a brother who lay down his life for another. That's basically saying, what are you willing to give to help someone else, or to see the mission or the objective come to pass? Now, I'm going to get ready to conclude for this first episode. And one thing I want you to remember is, if you truly love somebody, your main focus, regardless of what's going on in life, is to have a good time. The days are not guaranteed, and we ought to enjoy one another while we're in each other's presence. And we should never feel lucky to have a good time. This is not playing the lottery or gambling. This is about something that you do on your own merits. This is about how you think, not how society tells you to think. It's how you think. Be blessed in spite of the mess. And have a good time. Peace.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm taking my freedom, pulling it off the shelf, putting it on my chain, wear it around my neck. I'm taking my freedom, putting it in my car. Wherever I choose to go, it will take me far. Golden, 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 golden. I'm living my life like it's golden, 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 golden.